Hey guys, this is Urizi. Part 12 of What If Naruto Was the Son of Apollo. The summer after the quest for Artemis, Naruto has his hands full with guilt, concern and frustration. When Bianca's strange illness takes a turn for the worse, a quest is started. A relationship is strained, a hero returns, and the labyrinth is found. Join Naruto as he begins his quest for the cure and the others dive into the labyrinth. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and also check the author in the description if you liked the story. I don't want to make you wait any longer, so let's start. Chapter 15. As the large group on the quest for Daedalus followed their lead given to them by an immortal demigod, Naruto led his own group through his hometown, getting heads to turn as he did. People mumbled and whispered about the return of their hero, making Naruto smile slightly. Hopefully they wouldn't turn on him too quickly when they found out he had resigned from the shinobi forces. Piper and Jason were getting their own looks, too. Jason was attracting looks from girls in his age group, and Piper the boy's eyes were practically glued to, though neither noticed, content to continue their conversation about other things Jason missed by growing up in Camp Jupiter and what he had done in turn. Piper went on to talk about her father, how she was annoyed by his work would suck up most of his time and that they never did anything anymore. Jason jokingly related, saying his father was busy most of the time, too. He was shoved into a passing shopper for the joke. The most annoying thing to Naruto was how other teenage guys would look Talia's way with small grins on their faces, a few catcalls coming out of their mouths. Well, there was only one to be specific, which made Naruto stop any other attempts by walking over to the one civilian that did call out to her and threaten him in their native tongue about catcalling to his girlfriend. He could tell that others wanted to try what the fool before had, but were wary of gaining the wrath of the former Jinchuriki, rightfully so. Naruto Onaizen. Oyaban. Naruto turned at the call of his name as well as the title that came after it. The other three demigods did as well, staring at the three teens that slowed to a stop in front of them, all around Naruto and Talia's age, if not a few years older. The lone girl of the group had a light orange hair pulled up above her head in two vertical pigtails, and wore a sleeveless flak jacket over a violet t-shirt, a layered skirt and thigh-high boots. To her far left was a boy with round glasses on his face, short cropped brown hair, a zipped-up black jacket underneath his own olive-green utility vest, blue pants and sandals similar to Naruto's own. If it weren't for the small smile on his face, his posture and dulled eyes would have told them he had no interest in being here. Their leader was another boy, with black spiky hair and equally dark eyes. Like his two companions, he wore an olive-green flak jacket, only unzipped to reveal a yellow long-sleeved shirt with a loose red spiral on it that looked similar to the one Naruto had on the back of his white jacket. Brown cargo pants covered his legs, and like the whiskered blonde he wore sandals. The most glaring feature he had was a long blue scarf wrapped around his neck. Like many of the warriors around them, they each had a headband with the engraved leaf on the metal plate. The leader grinned in a manner similar to Naruto and spoke in a heavily accented English dialect. "Glad to see you back, boss." "Boss?" said Talia as a brow arched. Naruto was rubbing his temples with his right hand's index and thumb, knowing that this was karma at work. All he wanted was to do his duty and get out. Couldn't it be that easy, just once? Please. Sighing, he looked up with a small smile. "It's nice to see you again, too, Konohamaru." "Ha, see this, boss?" Konohamaru asked as he tugged at his flak jacket. "Chunin already. One step ahead of you on the road to Hokage." "I see that, Konohamaru," said Naruto with a small chuckle at his enthusiasm. "Moegi, Udon, congratulations on your own promotions." The two grinned and synchronized a thank you that impressed the foreign demigods. "So where've you been, boss?" asked Konohamaru as he eyed the newcomers curiously. His keen eye noticed the close distance Talia kept between him and herself and gave her a once-over. "Wow, boss. Is this your, His pinky raised as he asked the question and Naruto rolled his eyes. "What are you, 5? Just use your grown-up words. And for your information, yes, Talia-chan is my girlfriend. Have you guys done it yet?" asked Konohamaru bluntly, a grin on his face. "Idiot," said the girl, Moegi, as she punched him in the head, driving him into the dirt. Naruto winced in sympathy while Talia clenched her jaw in annoyance. Not only did having such a question asked in public embarrass her, but also now there was apparently an epidemic going around with women in this village braining guys because they were acting like guys. Sure, she occasionally hit Naruto for the same reason, but not hard enough, or as often on the head for that matter, to cause brain damage. Jason winced along with Udon, both of them pitying the now twitching teen that was eating dirt, while Piper just gaped at the scene. The people here were crazy, Naruto included, since he called a moderately aged woman grandma. And jumped out of a moving car. And fought a giant on his own, only getting help at the end. And he also managed to piss his girlfriend off by keeping the fact he knew her brother was still alive. Now that Piper thought about it, there were an awful lot of reasons to call Naruto crazy. Moegi-chan, said Konohamaru with a whine as he got up. That was completely uncalled for. I asked a perfectly legitimate question. You asked a perverted question in public, you dumbass, said Moegi. As they broke into an argument, Naruto sighed and looked at Udon. Does this happen often? Unfortunately, yes, said Udon as he sniffed up the small hanging booger that followed him around since he was a little kid. That has to suck, mumbled Piper. Being stuck with two arguing partners. I know the feeling, said Jason just as quietly, recalling a war game when he was younger and stuck with a son of Mercury and a legacy of Mars that just wouldn't agree on a plan. How his team won, he still has no idea. No, the constant booger, said Piper, pointing out the constant affliction that was bothering Udon. She shook her head. He should just go blow his nose. That's disgusting. Said Jason as he rolled his eyes with disbelief at the girl's concern. He could care less about a runny nose. Just keep eye contact, and you forget it's there. Where's your headband, Naruto and I? Udon's observation made all conversation stop. Naruto waited as Konohamaru and Moegi shifted their gazes to him as well. As expected, Konohamaru was the first to overreact. Holy crap! Where is your headband? It's against the law to not wear your headband, he said, looking like he was going to go into shock. More like an unwritten law, Udon corrected with a sniff of his nose as his brows furrowed. Most shinobi on their days off can get away with it, but for genin it's almost required to always have it with you in plain sight. Well, it's a good thing I'm not a genin then, said Naruto with a small smile on his whiskered face. Ha! You got promoted. Why didn't you say anything? Asked Konohamaru with annoyance on his face. I didn't get promoted, said Naruto, shaking his head. I resigned. You what? The three teenagers exclaimed. People listening in on the conversation gasped in shock. This isn't a funny joke, Naruto and Aizen, said Moegi, scolding the blonde with a frown as Udon nodded in agreement. Konohamaru was still far too shocked to reply. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. It isn't a joke, said Naruto. The grandson of the Sandaime Hokage faltered for a moment longer before he became angry. He stormed forward and grabbed Naruto by his jacket collar. Tell me why, demanded Konohamaru. Why would you resign from the Konohagakure no Sato Shinobi Corps? I have my reasons, said Naruto, who pushed the younger boy's hands away. That's bullshit. You wanted to be Hokage more than anything else in the world. You convinced me that there was more to being Hokage than just being the strongest ninja in the world, that you had to have the heart invested in protecting every member of the village. My heart belongs elsewhere, Konohamaru. I cannot devote myself to this village. I have been away 7 years and in that time I have made new bonds that I have to protect. I have a girlfriend whose life is set far away and is much safer out of a land filled with war nearly every other year. I have found family that needs me. I have a mission higher than what the Hokage can give me. I have a purpose that is forcing me away from here, and the constant rescue missions were going to cause more problems than they solve. Is that good enough for you, or do I have to continue? Konohamaru looked taken aback from how Naruto spoke to him with a stern gaze locked on him. The grandson of the Sandaime Hokage once more found himself speechless, as was his team. The three Chunin stared at him in disbelief. The way he spoke was with the same passion when he was talking about becoming Hokage. Konohamaru faltered for words, as did Moegi and Udon. Several civilians around them began murmuring worriedly, and a few sent betrayed looks to their blonde hero. Naruto ignored the eavesdropping audiences, mumbling as he kept his gaze on his, arguably, first three students. Their eyes were flinching as they tried to blink back the tears. He heard a soft hiccup come from Moegi, Udon's snot line, which in all honesty was very concerning. Maybe something was wrong with him, a chronic disease perhaps. Seemed to have gotten longer. And finally there was Konohamaru, the real grandson of the Sandaime and the first thing he ever had close enough to be a little brother. It hurt to see the look of betrayal in his eyes. "Look," said Naruto as he steeled himself for what he was about to do. "I don't have to defend myself to you. Tsunade has accepted my resignation and that's that. I'm resigned. I am no longer a member of the Konohagakure shinobi forces, sorry modern lingo. I meant I am not a shinobi for Konoha anymore. That's all I have to say. It was great seeing you all again." Without another word he spun around and left the three Chunin where they stood, civilians bursting into excited conversation as the three foreigners quickly followed after their hero. Some were dismayed that he was no longer a shinobi, others, who had put him high on a pedestal as some hero sent from the gods, the irony, wondered what was so important that caused him to leave the lifestyle of a shinobi behind. Some debated that he had grown tired of fighting while others argued that he was brainwashed. Naruto led his girlfriend and the two younger demigods through the streets teeming with merchants and civilians that hadn't heard his exchanged words. They were silent as they walked unlike before. Jason and Piper had no idea what to say and preferred to just follow the older demigods. Talia occasionally looked at her boyfriend with a bit of concern. He told her of his misadventures with the Konohamaru Corps, playing games with them and having fun on his days off. The way he had left them had to have left some sort of wound. It was the coldest she had ever seen him act to someone, let alone someone he was close to, and she knew it was tearing at him from the inside out. Finally, Naruto said as they came up on a large building that was about 5 stories high. It was shaped like an oval and had pale yellow walls with, you guessed it, red tiling for the rooftops. Naruto looked at the door with hesitation, like he was almost afraid of what could be behind the door. After what felt like forever, the blonde guardian reached out and opened the door. To his relief, he was met with silence rather than a giant welcome home fanfare. He led the 3 other demigods to the staircase at the end of the hall, leading them up the staircase until he got to the top floor. Naruto stopped outside a door on the left and lifted up the floor mat, finding a small brand new key for the apartment that was rebuilt while he was gone. "Welcome to Casa de Naruto," said the blonde as he unlocked the door and pushed it open. The 3 demigods gave a small impressed whistle as they entered into a small kitchen dining area, their shoes making soft sounds as Naruto hummed in interest. They rebuilt it down to the last detail. He opened the fridge and glowered. Expired milk included. Very funny. EW. Talia scrunched up her nose as Naruto pulled the carton out and shut the fridge's door, shaking the milk and getting a lovely sloshing sound in response that had Jason and Piper mimicking the older demigoddess. Naruto tossed the carton of milk in a bin next to the fridge. Jason took to looking at the few pictures on the wall while Talia began looking for where the dishes were kept to get herself a glass of water. Piper followed Naruto as he went through the door on the right of the entrance. "Bathroom is in here," said Naruto as he walked past the door on his left, where Piper quietly excused herself to investigate. Japanese cartoons depicted bathrooms strangely and she was curious. Naruto then opened the door directly in front of him and paused to take it all in. His bed was still set against the wall on his left, a dresser on the right, and a small television in the right corner near the balcony. His eyes widened as he remembered something and he went to the balcony doors, opening them and looking at the horse that stood patiently waiting for him. "Zephyr. I forgot you were waiting for me." "Sorry about that," said Naruto to the fiery horse with an affectionate rub on the neck. The spirit just whinnied and nuzzled his head into Naruto's hand. "Master is forgiven," said Zephyr. The blonde smiled softly in return and pet Zephyr on the side of the muzzle. The action earned a familiar chuckle that made Naruto stop petting his steed as Zephyr gave a whinny, both looking to the roof above them where a familiar one-eyed shinobi stood with his Greek book in hand. "A boy and his fiery horse," said Kakashi. Naruto could tell that there was a wide and amused smile underneath that mask. The senior shinobi chuckled and closed his book with a snap. "Why am I not surprised?" "So. Zephyr, god of the southern winds, right?" "Actually, that's Zephyrus," said Naruto. He looked to his fiery steed and gave the horse another affectionate rub on the neck. Zephyr snorted and shook his head in response, insulted for being mistaken as the god. He was one of the 3 fire horses that pulled Helios' sun chariot across the sky. Helios? The first god of the sun, son of Hyperion, titan of light. It's argued that his birth created the solar body known as the sun, which my dad now has in his domain. Ah, I see. So, Minato-sensei was a god? Well, to put it bluntly, yes. Dad had pissed Raijiji, Zeus off for the last time, and as punishment he was crammed into a mortal form with his godly memories and knowledge locked away. When Kachan's seal broke and he was forced to seal the fox into me, he sealed away his memories of the life he had here. When Nagato attacked. Who? Pain's true name. Interesting. Sorry, continue. Thanks. Like I was saying, when Nagato attacked the village, my dad's mortal memories began to stir as I fell further into hopelessness during our fight. When my faith in my ability to stop Nagato plummeted to nothing, he appeared before I could do something suicidal. After we had a chat, his mortal aspect returned to their rightful place, Apollo's mind. That's why he suddenly appeared and took me away after being away for so long. One would argue that he forgot about you. I honestly expected better from Minato-sensei, says the man who was always 2 hours late for anything. I was very busy. Right. I was. I'm sure. Humph. Well, I didn't want to talk about me anyway. You want to know why I resigned, don't you? I assume it has something to do with your newfound family. Most likely that little Muse you're dating. Muse? Yes, that Talia girl. Talia the Muse and Talia-chan are two different people. The Talia you're referring to had passed away centuries ago with her sisters. My half-sisters Apollones, Sophiso, and Borysthenes are the new muses, said Naruto. They are daughters of Apollo and Aphrodite. I don't know what brought them together and I don't want to think about it, so don't ask. Can I ask if Aphrodite is as beautiful as the books say? Said Kakashi. His eye was wide and hopeful. Naruto rolled his eyes at the question. She prefers to appear as what a man sees as beautiful or someone he loves, said Naruto. For me it was a mixture of both. Most of the love she took from were familial love, like Kachan's appearance and my Aunt Artemis' skin tone, and the beautiful features came from Talia-chan and Reina-chan, who is another friend of mine. Sounds more like an ex-girlfriend. Don't push me, Kakashi-sensei. Sorry, I couldn't resist. So your Talia is named after the muse? Yes, that's right. What happened to her, the original Talia? The original muses faded away centuries ago. Faded? It's how a god dies by natural means. Oh, like how an old person's body just gives out. Something like that. It's more because of a loss of faith in them. Take Selene, Eos, and Helios for instance. When the Romans took to the Greek pantheon, they couldn't afford all the same rituals that the Greeks did, and the three Titan gods faded away from a lack of faith. I see. So you can't kill them otherwise? Are you trying to? Better to be safe than sorry. That's not funny. Sorry. Don't make jokes like that, Kakashi-sensei. I won't. Was there anything else you wanted, or did you want to try and extort more information from me? Said Naruto with a frown. He wasn't too pleased with that last joke. From the steam coming from his nostrils, neither was Zephyr. Oh yes, Tsunade-sama wished to see you, said Kakashi with a snap of his fingers. Said something about having a good idea of what the disease was. Then I guess we're going back to the Hokage mansion, said Naruto. He rubbed Zephyr's neck again. Go on back to Olympus, Zephyr. I'll call you when I need a lift. As you wish, master, said Zephyr. Naruto stepped back and Kakashi watched as the horse turned around. Zephyr reared up on his hind legs and whinnied loudly before he shot off into the sky with a 6-foot-long trail of fire behind him. There was a sonic boom that attracted the attention of the other three demigods, having them rush outside with weapons at the ready. Well, Jason and Talia had their spears out at the ready. Piper had her dagger in hand but looked uneasy. Relax, everyone relax, said Naruto, his hands up to calm the others down. Zephyr just took off for Olympus. I'll call him when we need him again. Now we have to go back to the Hokage mansion. Great, said Talia. She relaxed and held her spear at her side, her other hand went to her hip and she scowled. That's another 30-minute walk through the crowded streets. Not if you go the ninja way, said Kakashi, dropping from the rooftop to the railing. He gave the two newcomers his patented eye smile. Hello, I'm Kakashi Hatake, by the way. I taught Naruto how to be a shinobi. No, you taught me tree climbing and how to be a good comrade, said Naruto. Same thing. I distinctly recall asking for, and I quote, badass shinobi jutsu. Not tree climbing and getting an ass poke. Unnoticed by the others, Jason shivered at that statement. You had the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Touché. This is nice and all, but don't we have somewhere to be? Asked Jason. He had put away Julius's weapon form when he realized there was no threat, but still had the coin in his hand. Jason's right, said Piper. The sooner we get the cure for Bianca, the sooner we can leave and he can complete his quest. Righto, charm speaker, said Naruto. Doubt we should take the scenic route, since Taliya-chan doesn't like heights and I don't know how well Jason can fly yet. You can fly, said Piper, looking at the other blonde. Even Kakashi eyed the boy with interest. Jason shrugged nonchalantly like it was no big deal. Yes he can, but that's beside the point, said Naruto. He offered his hand out to the group. Alright, everyone take my hand, we're going to take the quicker route. We'll meet you there, Kakashi-sensei. Taliya was the first to take the son of Apollo's hand. Jason put his hand over his sister's and Piper put her hand over his. Kakashi watched as Naruto gave him a wink before vanishing in the all-too-familiar yellow flash. The one-eyed shinobi smirked from where he stood and looked up at the bright sun. He's definitely your son, said Kakashi. The Jonin chuckled in amusement, disappearing in a cloud of smoke. The group reappeared outside the Hokage mansion. Piper groaned and grabbed her head, getting a look of confusion from Jason while Naruto and Taliya looked at her apologetically. Sorry, Piper, said Naruto. Forgot that you might feel a bit disoriented. What about Taliya and Jason? Piper asked. She rubbed her head and looked at the seemingly unaffected gray siblings with envy. Why don't they have a headache? My Hiraition no Jutsu goes through Raijiji's realm, the sky, so they don't have to worry about it, said Naruto. He put his hand on her head and closed his eyes. After a moment, he removed his hand. Nothing to worry about. Your headache is just a headache, so you should be fine in a few minutes. Drawbacks to the Hiraition? Kakashi asked as he appeared behind Jason. The surprise made the Roman flip his coin into the air and after he caught it, a golden sword appeared in his hand. He spun on his heel before Naruto could stop him, making Kakashi jump back and away from the weapon that was swung in his direction. Jason! At Naruto's voice, Jason looked back at him to see the older blonde giving him a frown. Put Julius away. Now! Jason nodded curtly and with a small flash of light, Julius was once again a Roman gold coin. While the Roman demigod tried to calm his nerves, Naruto looked at Kakashi, who was eyeing the younger blonde cautiously. Don't sneak up on them, said the blonde to his former teacher. Kakashi straightened himself up and gave Naruto his patented eye smile. I figured that out on my own, thanks, said Kakashi with a laid-back drawl. So, you can do the Hiraition, but Zeus? Naruto nodded at the correct pronunciation of the name. Zeus doesn't let the children of other gods go through for free. As far as I know, my dad and I are the only ones that can use the Hiraition without a drawback, said Naruto. Aside from his old bodyguards, but they have to work together to do it and were sworn to secrecy. How do you know they'll keep that secret? Said Taliya as her brows knit together in suspicion. Naruto gave her a look of disbelief and the daughter of Zeus relaxed. Oh. Right, yeah. I know, said Naruto. He gave a firm nod to support his own words. The blonde shinobi turned guardian faced the doors and pushed one open. Let's just go in, get the vial, and leave before this quest gets even more complicated than it has to. He and the three demigods went back up the familiar stairs and entered into Tsunade's office. They noticed two things once they did. First, Tsunade had changed her attire to wear red and white ceremonial robes, a large pyramid-shaped hat sitting on her desk with the kanji for fire facing them. Second, this time it wasn't just Tsunade within the room. Sitting at desks that were brought into the office, for more people sat, 3 men of varying ages and 1 woman in her late 20s to early 30s. Oh my! He's the splitting image of his handsome father, said the woman from the far right. She wore blue and white ceremonial robes, her matching hat set to the side. She had long auburn hair that was styled oddly to the demigods with a strange bun held at the top by a blue band. 2 short bangs framed her left eye, with one covered her right eye while the green left eye leered at Naruto. 2 more bangs reached past her chin and crossed over her impressive chest hidden by her ceremonial robes. She had on blue lipstick that went along well with her skin tone and her robes, the lips pulled back into a familiar smirk that sent a chill down Naruto's back and put Taliya on edge. Can't you once just say hello to someone, Mizukage Dano? Said the smallest person in the room. A balding old man wearing brown and white ceremonial robes received a glare from the woman for his comment. He had a large nose, underneath which was a relatively thick mustache, a triangular beard came from his chin and large eyebrows jutted out like pale caterpillars, but looking past the stereotypical old man was a man of power. Looking into his dark eyes was a glance at a man with years of wisdom, power and grief. He scoffed after looking over the blonde and crossed his arms. To think, this brat is the offspring of the Kiroi Senku. He looks as threatening as a butterfly. I agree with it, Tsuchikage. How will he turn the tide in our war other than his blood? Asked the largest man in the room. He too wore ceremonial robes, colored white and yellow, but they were pulled taut around what had to be thick muscle. His hair was slicked back and stark white blonde. His hardened face had a small mustache of his own, a shorter, cleaner triangular beard jutting out from his chin. The four demigods were reminded of statues at Camp Jupiter by looking at this man. Don't let his looks deceive you, Reikage Dano, said the young man to the large man's immediate right. He wore white and green robes as opposed to his other counterparts. His skin was paler than average and around his two green eyes were very thick dark markings, indicating a sleeping disorder. Above his left eye was a red tattoo, a kanji, that could be seen beneath his unruly red hair. The young man stood and exited behind his desk, walking towards a dumbstruck Naruto with a small smile. It is good to see you once again, my friend. Gaara, said Naruto. He returned the grin and the two friends shook hands firmly, representing their strong bond. Man, the years have been good to you. Not as well as they have to you, Naruto, said Gaara as he retracted his hand. You look only a few years older than when you left. Naruto gave a sheepish chuckle and scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, apparently my Kachin's bloodline flows strong in me, said the blonde to his friend. He then beamed. Oh, I've got to introduce you to the others. Kazekage Dano, said the Reikage. The two old friends looked in the massive man's direction as he frowned. We were brought here to discuss the case of Naruto Uzumaki, not to catch up over lunch. Well, aren't you the Roman in the room? Muttered Naruto with a scowl. No, said Gaara as he raised his hand to calm Naruto. Reikage Dano is correct. This is a serious matter we have to discuss. He went back to his seat and sat down, looking at Naruto professionally. Genin Naruto Uzumaki of Konohagakure no Sato, Tsunade began, you were abducted by an unknown force and MIA for 7 years, and only now on the brink of the 4th Shinobi War do you return. After assaulting teams sent to retrieve and debrief you, nonetheless. I thought the war started, said Naruto. He dropped his own friendly face and turned just as serious as the 5 great leaders. And those teams had a primary mission that contradicted my own. Well, all except for Shikamaru Nara's team. Be that as it may, said Tsunade. Her jaw was tight as she spoke, indicating that this was not her decision. The leaders of the Shinobi Alliance in all their brilliance want to know why. Why didn't you return in those 7 years? Why did you choose to return now? You don't seriously think he's a spy, do you? Said Kakashi after he had put all this together. Looking at his leader, Kakashi stepped forward. Tsunade-sama, I gave you several good sources of information. Gods. Fae. The Tsuchikage scoffed. What proof do you have that there are gods? Or that there are children of gods, for that matter? I think your village should stave off the hero worship for a while. Minato Namikaze was no god, he was a man. A dead man, for that matter. This Greek mythology is ridiculous, said the Mizukage in agreement. These lands in your books don't exist anywhere on the known map. Tsunade-sama. We went to those lands. Kakashi interjected. He has a point, said Gaara in defense of the Jonin. Commanders of the other squads also report this. America. Who's not to say that there isn't another continent out there beyond our reach? Our reason for being here is not over whether or not gods exist or if there are more lands to explore. Boomed the Reikage. He shoved a finger in Naruto's direction. The reason we are here is to know if he is with the Alliance or the Akatsuki. I am not with anyone. This is not my war, said Naruto as his arms crossed. I have my own war to prepare for, one that concerns the safety of my family. You do not get to choose what is and is not your war, boy, said the Tsuchikage. He levitated out of his seat and pointed at the blonde. You are a Jinchuriki. You are a weapon and you will fight. And where did that get you with the Jinchuriki of Iwagakure, Anoki? Tsunade countered in Naruto's defense. The Tsuchikage, Anoki, scowled in her direction before sitting back down. Tsunade looked back at Naruto. You have to make a decision, Naruto. I don't have to do anything. I came here because I thought you had a cure for the disease I gave you, said the blonde with a frown. If you don't then just tell me now. Not yet, but I can if you give me time. The disease is impossibly rare, said Tsunade. The three demigods blinked in shock and Naruto gave her a piercing stare. As the other Kage looked in her direction, Tsunade sighed. It was an old disease that was hopefully lost to time. One that doctors and physicians, even medical shinobi, are skeptical of its existence. This one disease is said to have killed thousands with one drop and only fell out of existence after the Sage of Six Paths began teaching chakra. What is it? Said Naruto with anticipation. He had to know now. What was killing his charge? It has no official medical name, but the legend about it says it came from overseas, from a land named after a mighty empress, said Tsunade. Looking at the blonde, she said a phrase that made him want to ball up in fear. Atin no Akibio. The other 10 people in the room looked at the blonde as he stumbled back from shock, as though he was physically hit with it, steadied by Taliya and Kakashi before he could fall over. In the back of his head he knew what it was, but refused to believe that it had come back. It was his worst fear come to life, a disease that many, even the Olympians, forgot about. One that his father never found a cure for. A disease that nearly ended the world in different moments of time. It went by many names now because of its various mutations over the thousands of years it existed. Bubonic plague was the most common. The Black Death was the most well-known, but the original form of this disease had no cure. There was no way to stop it. It was one of the most horrible things Naruto could ever hear. With a dry voice, Naruto managed to translate what Tsunade had said. The Plague of Athens, Chapter 16. The Plague of Athens? Asked Piper. Her brows were furrowed together in confusion and she looked at the weary blonde demigod, who was grumbling in a language that she couldn't understand. Di perduendit. Contra fata mihi numen. Gods damn it. The fates are against me, I swear. Naruto, really? Said Jason, giving him a mild look of annoyance. In Latin, sorry, said the older blonde. He reached up with both hands and rubbed his temples. Fates, why? Why do you hate me? Why did it have to be the Plague of Athens? How did Bianca even get it? Do you know something about it? Asked Tsunade. Naruto made it clear he wasn't the same lovable idiot he used to be, but that didn't mean he wasn't still the kind and caring teen he was when he was taken. The Plague of Athens is, or rather was, a dead disease that struck Athens in the summer of 430 BCE, said Naruto. The disease then came back in the winter of 423 BCE. During the second outbreak, Athens was under siege by Sparta and most if not all citizens were confined into the city. The disease spread further and more people succumbed to it. The death rate was lower than in the first outbreak, but animals were also affected by it, so it was easier to be exposed in the second. Oh, crap, I hope that ranger hasn't been infected. Athens? Sparta? Where are these places? They don't show on any of the maps that Konoha supplied for us, said the Mizukichi. And why did you count down when you spoke of the second outbreak? They are city-states and that have since been lost to time, ruins scattered in the continent of Europe, said Naruto. He pinched the bridge of his nose. BCE stands for Before Common Era. It's a way for historians beyond the elemental nations' lands to measure time. Similar to how we measure, though we measure it after the founding of Konohagakure no Sato since that's when we had enough peace to actually write a date down, said Gaara. So for us, how long ago did these cities exist? Konoha is about 200 years old, said Naruto. He crossed his arms, closed his eyes and bowed his head, entering what some at Camp Half-Blood the thinking pose of doom, since he usually only did that to either think of a prank or think of a new way to torture/train the other demigods. The blue sun-filled eyes snapped open when he gave a response. About 2,000 years before Konoha was created. Impossible. Inoki shot up from his seat with disbelief in his eyes. There is no plausible way to measure time before the Warring Ages. No, I don't think there is, said the blonde as he nodded in agreement. However, the world outside ours has found a way to measure their history in correspondence with that of the planet's existence. I merely did the math in my head. Which explains the smoke coming from your ears, said Taliya under her breath. The 5 leaders snapped their gazes on her, each of the trained warriors looking at her with veiled distrust in their eyes. Naruto, however, rolled his own eyes at his girlfriend's words. Before he could retort, Inoki beat him to the punch. Who are these children, asked Itsukage, ignoring the Thunder God's children's glares. Why are we allowing them to stay? They could be spies for the minor villages. They know nothing about our lands, said Naruto. His hands had clenched his arms tightly and he gave a hard look to Inoki. You will leave them be. You've been with them for 7 years, said the Raikage. You could have told them anything. Perhaps if we questioned them properly we could discern whether or not they were dangerous. I would like to see you try, said Naruto as he locked a look of warning on the man. Are you going to stop me, boy? Asked the Raikage as he rose from his seat. He stood at nearly 6.5 feet, towering over Naruto's 6-foot frame by a head. Naruto moved in a flash of golden light, reappearing in front of the Raikage's desk with his arms still crossed, looking up at the man with narrowed eyes. I'll say it again, said Naruto. I'd like to see you try. So the rumors are true, said the Mizukage with a small smirk. Not only as handsome as his father, but just as quick. Maidano, please stop making such remarks, said Tsunade, putting a hand to her head and wishing she had another drink in hand. The brat was just causing her more and more headaches to deal with. That was something she wished had changed with his absence from the continent. That wasn't the Hiraishin no Jutsu, said the Raikage. He jabbed a finger in Naruto's face. I saw no Fuinjutsu or kunai throne. Dad perfected time/space transportation after he took me from the continent, said Naruto. He teleported back to where he previously stood, looking back at the Kage with a gleam in his eye. The only way to keep our access to it open was to keep it named Hiraishin in honor of Zeus, King of Olympus, God of Thunder and Lord of the Sky. So many titles, this Zeus character is quite arrogant, isn't he? Said Inoki. King, Lord, and God. Naruto sent the man a look, just a look, and the whole room suddenly went cold. Once again, Naruto tapped into Helios power and used more than what was necessary to make the Kage unnerved. Kakashi had all but frozen, as his body shone lightly. Even Gaara, who knew the intent wasn't sent his way and had dealt with demonic hatred, was shaken slightly. The demigods were on edge and already backing towards the door. I say this out of my concern for the innocent civilians scattered across these lands. Do not ever mock Zeus. For now, you are safe from his wrath, said the blonde gravely, but a day will come where you are not. Is that a threat, Naruto? Naruto shifted his gaze to Tsunade. The two blondes held their gaze for a moment before Naruto shrugged. Just a word of friendly advice, he said. The impressive power he began to display dispersed immediately, stopping Talia, Jason and Piper from their retreat. He took a soft breath before looking at Tsunade once again. Was there anything else you needed? Tsunade opened her mouth to answer, but was interrupted by a large spiraling vortex appearing in between the 5 Kage and Naruto. Out stepped a familiar masked figure, hiding his face from the shinobi while Naruto remembered it clearly. His orange mask had been swapped out with a full covering mask modeled after a familiar rippling purple eye. 3 holes were carved in the mask that put Naruto on edge, while behind him Talia and Jason both raised their spears, electricity dancing across them. You! The Raikage boomed as he stood, knocking the desk he was seated behind forward. The other 3 Kage, Inoki had already jumped onto his desk, stood just as quickly and glared at the intruder. Hello foolish Kage, said the psychopath who called himself Madara. He laughed insanely as he waved at each one before once more looking at Naruto. You returned. Oh, happy day. Does this mean the Jinchuriki is going to hand over the Kyuubi? I will never hand over Kyuubi, said Naruto. His hands moved from his arms to clench at his side. His bracelet's ruby gleamed and a black slit appeared, radiating bloodlust. The demigods heard a low growl while everyone else was too distracted with the intruder. I thought you were no longer a Jinchuriki, said Tsunade. You actually believe that report? Asked Mei. No Jinchuriki can survive the extraction of their Biju. He is an Uzumaki, said Tsunade. My grandmother was one as well, and she was reported to have lived an entire day after her extraction. If she not been over 100 years old, she might have lasted longer. Amusing how they argue even now, isn't it, Naruto-kun? Said Madara. The attention went back to him and his masked head looked around. Well you do. You act as though you have a chance against me. I already have 8 of the 9 Biju, just give yourself up, Naruto-kun, and I guarantee that the Crooked One will not rise ever again. The Crooked One? The Kage all narrowed their eyes at the intruder in suspicion. I'm surprised you hadn't told them yet, considering your gods are preparing for a war with him, said Madara. He chuckled. Then again, it's not too surprising seeing as our lands have no faith due to the constant war we are in. Even the monks at various temples across the continent believe the kami has abandoned us. Why do you think I am doing what I am doing? I am going to revive the original god to save this world from the hell we live in. You're a fucking whack job, said Naruto. Am I? Said Madara. Or am I just the only one who can see clearly? See far better than your father can see. Don't push your luck, psycho, said Naruto with a frown. As far as he was concerned, only he and others connected to the Greek/Roman pantheon could insult his father. He disappeared with a flash of light and reappeared behind the man, a kunai in hand, and drove it forward at Madara's back. Naruto fell through the man like he was a projection, but then felt weight on his back as Madara stepped up onto him. He would have teleported but felt a foreign chakra focused on his back. Flaring his chakra did nothing, so that meant it was a seal of some sort. Nice try, Kyubi no Jinchuriki. But I am untouchable. My power grants me such protection from a worthless fool like yourself, said the masked madman. He turned to look at the Kage, making Naruto grunt as he purposefully dug his heel into the blonde's back on his turn. Seeing as you have been so kind as to bring me a gift, I suppose I should return the favor. Well, I was going to give you a surprise anyway. I mean, it's just so rude to show up at a host's home without a gift. Madara's hand raised and his fingers snapped. There was a distant explosion and the Kage all swiveled in their seats to look out the window as screams began. In the distance, in the area near the shopping district, there was another sudden plume of smoke. We're under attack, said Tsunade, spinning around to glare at the masked madman. Madara's shoulders began to shake and soft chuckles came from him. His masked head looked down at the blonde beneath his foot. Oh, now the fun really begins, said Madara. He reached down to grab Naruto by his hair, pulling his head back. A very old friend of yours is dying to see you again, Naruto-kun. Try not to disappoint him. The masked Uchiha then slammed the blonde's face into the floor. He waits for you at my final battleground. Talia and Jason pulled their weapons out, both receiving spears upon doing so, and a large amount of sand shot out of the gourd seated behind Gaara. Madara became intangible, avoiding the sand and ignored the electrified spears that were jabbed through his chest. Another spiraling void appeared behind him and he smirked at the three demigods glaring at him, specifically looking at the two children of the Thunder God. Talia and Jason were trying to keep their spears within him, so that they could shock and or kill the man that was openly attacking their friend. Farewell, children of the false king, said Madara snidely. My regards to your father. He stepped back into the void, disappearing from view. Once the void sealed up, Naruto pushed himself off the ground, spitting carpet debris in his mouth out. He stood up and brushed his shoulders off. Not only is he a psychopath, but he's a dick, too. Are you alright, Uzumaki? Asked Mei. I've had worse, said Naruto nonchalantly. He looked out the window at several smaller explosions. Shouldn't we go deal with that? You will all stay here, said Tsunade. We will investigate. Kakashi. The man nodded, and along with his Kage, left in an explosion of smoke, leaving the four demigods with the four Kage. The room looked back at the blonde questionably. Why didn't you just use your Hiration to get out from under his foot? Said the Raikage. Simple, said Naruto. He reached behind him and pulled a tag off his back. After looking at the tag, Naruto showed it to the four Kage. The psychopath had a mass memory seal on the sole of his foot that could have easily had a contingency seal. When the tag was pressed against me, it memorized my place in relation to the Earth's floor, so if I used Hiration, a bomb could have gone off. Why didn't it go off when you stood? Asked Gaara, his sand flying back into the gourd with ease. Piper, Jason and Talia watched that occur with awe, but the red-headed leader paid them no mind, preferring to look at the resident seal expert. It's a false tag, said Naruto. It acts like a normal mass memory seal, but has a secondary false rune that acts like a live explosive tag waiting to go off. The blonde opened his mouth to say more when everyone in the room felt the urge to move away from the window and did so, the Kage and the blonde jumping back. Just in time, it would seem, as large dark gray-skinned man with bright orange hair crashed through the glass, his left forearm having a hideous axe-like protrusion jutting out of it. Crazed black scara eyes with yellow irises darted around the room before looking at Jason, who had pulled Julius out and flipped it into the air. The man's mouth spread widely into a grin. I'll kill you first. he said, moving faster than the people in the room had expected him to and bringing his left arm up. Die! Jason caught Julius just in time to block the man's axe-like growth with his sword. Talia pulled her mace canister out and Piper reached for the dagger at her side, ready to help when Naruto held his hand out slightly, Piper's ADHD allowing her to catch the subtle movement. Talia's jaw clenched, noting her irritation at being told to back off. You! The Raikage said, his face contorting into one of rage. He jumped forward to attack the man, relieving Jason from his struggles against the stranger. The man brought his other arm up and it became a monstrous larger fist, heading for the Raikage's face. The Raikage's own massive hand caught the larger one with ease, holding the axe arm off with his brace-covered forearm. Where is Uchiha Sasuke? Sasuke said I could kill. The man said. So let me kill. Where is he? The Raikage demanded. He glanced down and saw small amounts of sand slithering across the floor and circling the man's legs. The man said nothing, his grin widening. Enough, Jugo, said a calm and collected voice, stopping all movement. The room shifted their gaze to the man standing in the window, his eyes had locked with Naruto's and tension was rising. He wore a jacket similar to the one Madara wore, black and covered in red clouds, concealing his form from their eyes, though his young and handsome face made him look to be about 20 or so. His black hair, to the demigod's amusement, looked like the rear end of a duck. His eyes were blacker than the night and were filled with nothing but restrained loathing for the blonde that met his gaze. Uchiha Sasuke, said the Raikage in surprise and anger. Gaara took this moment to encase the man called Jugo in his sand, allowing the Raikage to shift his attention on the one that helped in the capture of his brother. Said Sasuke as he avoided the man's attack. A tag was slapped onto the Raikage's massive form, rendering him immobile. I would be more than happy to take your arm again, but right now, I have a personal issue to deal with. His words finished leaving his mouth and Naruto had vanished, reappearing with his fist pulled back as he was a foot away from Sasuke. The last Uchiha narrowed his eyes, and caught the fist with ease. Naruto allowed a grin to spread across his face. "Yuki-chan," he said jovially. "Did you miss me that much?" "I'm a clone," said Sasuke informatively. "I await you where we had our greatest battle to date. To the end, then," said Naruto. He snatched his fist out of the clone Sasuke's hand, this time driving it hard into the palm to the point it would shatter a wrist. The injury caused the clone to dispel itself and left Naruto to look at the Kage. "If you'll excuse me, I have a dinner date to get to." He left with a flash of light before anyone could stop him. The Kage and demigods all shifted their gaze to Jugo, whose head thrashed around in the sand like cell. "What is that?" Piper asked. "Jugo," said Gaara, his monotonous voice surprising the three demigods. He stepped forward and looked at Jason, his arms crossing over his chest. "An interesting weapon you have. Sealed until needed and released with chakra." "Sure," said Jason. He watched the man warily, knowing that if Gaara had not needed eye contact to restrain the powerful man named Jugo, he was stronger than he let on. "Your name is Gaara, right?" Talia's voice drew all eyes, save for the entrapped Jugo, to her. The Kazekage nodded curtly. Her eyes narrowed. "Where is Naruto going?" "To fight Sasuke." Gaara said simply. "Well, where is that?" Talia asked. "That's a very good question," said E with a scowl on his face. "It would be safer if you didn't try to interfere," said Gaara. The last time Naruto and Sasuke fought all out, they redecorated the sacred boundary. "And the Namikaze lost," said Inoki with a snort. "Because he held back," said Gaara with a glare at the old man. "Naruto has always had an advantage against Sasuke. The Uchiha can manipulate the Biju," said E with a glower. "You recall the battle for Takigakure no Sato 2 years ago, don't you Garadano?" "I was there." "Then you know how foolish it is for Namikaze to face the Uchiha. Naruto is now like me once again," Gaara said sternly. The other three Kage looked at him curiously. Gaara said nothing more, but if he had tried to, he would have been cut off by Talia's question. "Where did he go?" The daughter of Zeus was at her patience's limit and spoke through gritted teeth, her hand tightened around her spear and sparks emitted from the blade. A light snicker broke their attention to the side, where a young man with short white hair and shark-like teeth leaned against the wall, and a large blade at his side. "Well, this is shocking, isn't it, Jugo?" said the man with a shake of his head. "That just flat out sucked." Piper mumbled, Jason snorting in agreement while Talia glared at the guy who was making it difficult for her to get straight answers. The newcomer grinned again and ducked under a glob of lava that was sent his way. Mizukage Dano, how rude for a woman of your standing to interrupt someone. The Mizukage merely narrowed her eyes at the man. Hozuki Suigetsu. I thought that you had learned from your previous attempt on my life. Oh, but I'm not attacking you this time, Mizukage Dano, said Suigetsu. A kunai went right through his head and his eyes widened before he became a puddle of water. Arrogant punk, said Inoki. He lowered his arm and glared at the puddle. A Mizu Bunshin, water clone. Figures. No, you idiot. Mei's retort was cut off as the puddle bubbled and quickly shot upwards, reforming as a human made from water. The white-haired man cracked his neck as the watery appearance faded and more natural skin appeared. That was annoying, said Suigetsu. As I was saying, I'm just here for the 3 brats that Uzumaki Kit brought with him. He paused and brought a finger up to tap his chin. Oh, and to free Jugo, too, I suppose. There are 4 Kage here, what makes you think you could get away with it? Said E, his fists clenching and his teeth gritting. Well, said Suigetsu. How about I drown you all? He raised his liquefied hand and sent 4 large globs at the Kage, their heads getting hit by small droplets as they dodged. Suigetsu's grin widened and he turned his hand up and crushed it into the fist. The droplets on the Kage's faces spread, being fueled by the moisture in the air before their heads were encased in globs of water. Suigetsu's face turned into a wide grin as the sand fell from Jugo's form, allowing the man to look around before he attacked the Kage. Inoki and Mei all exploded into smoke, surprising the 3 demigods, whereas Gaara fell apart into sand. The sand was reforming, albeit slowly due to the water weighing it down, giving the 2 allies of Sasuke, Jugo the more hesitant until Suigetsu hissed the Uchiha's name, the time to flee out the window. What do we do? Jason asked, deferring to his sister. Chase after them, duh, said Talia. She turned to leave the room when Gaara's sand finished reforming, this time being a sandy version of the red-headed leader. Wait, the monotonous and grainy voice of the Kazekage stopped the 3 demigods in their tracks. The other 4 Kage will be on their way to assist Konoha shortly. I have been instructed to help you catch up to Naruto. How? How did you even what are you? Piper asked. I am known as a Suna Bunshin, sand clone, said the grainy Kazekage. The original Gaara has a close connection with the sand. He looked at them. Has he told you about his burden? I know about it, said Talia with a frown. I know you're one, too, corrected the clone. At her confused look, since Jinchuriki cannot survive extraction, he continued, I was given a second chance at life thanks to an elder of my village, partially because of Naruto. He saved my life and helped me more than I can repay. We have to leave now. The gourd of sand dissolved and a large platform was created beneath them before they floated upwards. I don't have long before I lose my chakra. The 3 demigods nodded and he took them through the window, racing over the cries of the confused civilians. Ninja were darting across the village dousing fires and the masked shinobi called Anbu were racing even faster, scurrying around in search of the cause of the attack. Piper took notice of the Hokage beneath them and pointed her out. Keep your attention on the goal, said the clone of Gaara. But shouldn't we try to help them? Jason said to the clone. There is nothing you can do for them here, said Gaara. You must help Naruto. He faces his most difficult battle today, a battle that has caused the end of many great shinobi. He fought a titan, what could be more challenging than that? Said Talia. Gaara turned and looked at her with piercing eyes, albeit made of sand, but were piercing nonetheless. Gaara's arms crossed over his chest and he faced forward once again. He faces a trial of morality and mentality, said the clone. Once again, he is forced to fight his best friend. Imagine the pain one must endure in order to come to terms with that. It is a challenge I would wish on no one, not even my most hated enemy. So, said Kyubi, are we going to kill the Uchiha Bret this time? Naruto said nothing, prompting his guardian spirit to sigh. He was forced to remain quiet around the shinobi lest a panic break out and the foolish ninjen try to separate them, so talking now was almost a relief, but it would figure that the blonde didn't want to discuss the important matters. Look, Kit, we can't dance around this anymore. You've already displayed your dislike for traitors. Just shut up, Q, said Naruto. His gaze was cold and hardened as he dashed through the familiar path to the Valley of the End. His last journey to the valley had resulted in 3 of his friends being hospitalized, two of them in critical condition, and a seed of doubt planted in the far back of his mind. Not that Naruto knew about that seed, well, not until he died, anyway. Now he was conflicted once again. You still see him as a fellow orphan, said Kyubi. Naruto said nothing and the spirit forcibly manifested next to him. Kit, don't be foolish about this. He is a threat to your mate. She's not my ma you know what I mean. You stingy humans, fine, your girlfriend is in danger with him around. Naruto hesitated with his retort. I know that. I just don't know if I can kill him. It's no wonder that you didn't kill the son of Hermes, said Kyubi. Still the ideal fool that everyone can be redeemed. Are you going to fight with me or not? Naruto looked at his companion with a hint of annoyance on his face, jumping through the trees as he did so long ago. Despite your poor choices, I will still fight with you. Kyubi scoffed and crossed his arms as he hovered alongside Naruto. Someone has to show you how to be ruthless, and your bloodthirsty uncle lacks the mental capacity to teach it. Naruto smirked at the jibe. His smile fell into a frown as he broke through the foliage and landed on the rocky ground leading up to the massive waterfall. A single step was taken before a kunai shot down to the ground with a blank forehead protector tied to it, landing right in front of him. Naruto looked up to the top of the statue of Madara Uchiha, the real one, and his eyes narrowed. Looking down at him with his right hand resting on the handle of his sword was none other than Sasuke Uchiha. The dark-haired man's equally dark eyes narrowed before he spoke. Last time we fought here, it was as equals. We were both shinobi. Pick up the headband. I resigned for a reason, Sasuke, said Naruto. Nevertheless he picked the headband up and tied it around his forehead. But if you want to make this an official duel, I suppose I can humor you. Sasuke's lip twitched slightly in amusement. He jumped down and landed 50 feet away from Naruto. Mockingly, he raised his left hand while extending his first and middle fingers in the seal of confrontation. Naruto narrowed his eyes and did the same. They bowed slightly and held their gaze before they both vanished in pure speed. They reappeared in the middle of where they once stood, Naruto's blade holding back Sasuke's while Sasuke used the tip of his blade to hold back the edge of Naruto's shield. This is new, Naruto, said Sasuke, his eyes blinking and becoming red irises with 3 comma-like points set in a triangular orbit around the pupil. Did I embarrass you that much during our last meeting? Actually the last meeting was a little gay now that I think about it, said Naruto in return. Something you want to tell me, Sasuke? You're dead, Uzumaki. Bring it, Uchiha. The two pushed away from each other, with the raven-haired man flipping his hands through seals at a fast rate. He inhaled through his nose before a large fireball shot from his mouth. Naruto made his own hand seals before shooting a ball of fire from his mouth that was roughly the same size as his opponent's. The two orbs of destruction collided and exploded, a loud bang echoing through the trees and sending many birds flying from their roosts. How did you learn that? Sasuke's eyes narrowed at his former teammate. The Gakakyu no Jutsu, Great Fireball Technique, is a Uchiha clan technique. Hatake must have shown you. For your information, I reverse-engineered it, said Naruto with a scowl of annoyance. What he didn't say was that his mother had told him through her knowledge of the technique how it was formed thanks to her friendship with Sasuke's mother, and Naruto just did as he always did, pump it full of chakra and then some. Anything else you want to whine about, or can we get started already? You've already lost, said Sasuke with a sneer. He lifted his sword up and vanished in a burst of speed. Naruto blocked the blade with his shield and stabbed forward with his sword, Sasuke sidestepping the attack with ease. The Uchiha's right fist planted itself in Naruto's face, making the blonde stumble backwards. Sasuke pressed on his attack, slashing at his opponent's exposed torso. Naruto's shield-bearing arm shot up and stopped Sasuke's blade, the blonde sword-wielding hand turning the blade around and driving the pommel of his sword into the Uchiha's nose. Sasuke's head snapped back, allowing Naruto to press on by first shoving away Sasuke's sword and then driving the edge of his shield into the raven-haired teen's stomach. The wind left Sasuke in a rush, a gasp escaping his lips before he exploded in a cloud of smoke, leaving behind a bruised log. Naruto felt his eye twitch in annoyance. He loved the Kawarimi sometimes, but by the fates did he hate when it was used on him. The blonde's already raised sword dropped down to stop Sasuke's blade from striking at his back, Naruto twisting out of the strange block before ducking under a high roundhouse kick. He retaliated with a thrust kick that was readily avoided, and then caught the blade aimed for his head with his own. The two former friends glared at one another, before pushing away once again, 10 feet of distance between them. "You're not as bad with a sword as I expected," said Sasuke. "The shield must throw you off balance, though. If it's bothering you that much, then let me try this," said Naruto as he smirked and sheathed his blade into the slit at the portion near his forearm, creating the impartial god arm. His right hand punched into the open left hand while the eyes on his shield shone red, displaying Kyuubi's eagerness for the coming fight. "I thought you wanted to fight, Sasuke. Give me something to sweat about. How is that going to help you?" Sasuke asked with disbelief written on his face. Naruto's retort was to vanish in a flash of golden light and reappear with his back to Sasuke's, his arms at his side and a smirk on his face. Sasuke blinked at the sudden stinging of cool air on his cheek, reaching his hand up and checking it. When his fingers pulled away, Sasuke's eyes widened a margin when he found blood trickling down his face. Narrowing his eyes, he turned around and glared at Naruto's back, clenching his fist around his blade and channeling his secondary chakra nature through it. Naruto stiffened slightly at the sound of crackling and turned to face Sasuke, looking warily at the now lightning-covered blade in his opponent's hand. His eyes looked up to meet Sasuke's, the cerulean blue sun-filled eyes of determination looking into hate-filled blood-red eyes with 4 smaller black orbs glaring back at him. Naruto's knuckles cracked as he tightened his fists and Sasuke's blade slowly rose until it was pointing right at the blonde. "Ready, Naruto?" "Always." The two stayed in their position for another moment before they moved. The clanging of Naruto's shield blocking Sasuke's sword could be heard for miles, but they were still too far to be interrupted. Sasuke stabbed forward, his electric blade sparking in almost excitement at the prospect of cutting and shocking the blonde its owner faced. Naruto sidestepped the stab, throwing his left arm forward to impale Sasuke in the chest, but the Uchiha quickly brought his sword up to block the attack. Naruto recoiled from the shock he received, glaring at the lightning around the raven-haired man's sword. He wasn't a fan of lightning. "What's the matter, Naruto?" said Sasuke. "You afraid of a little lightning? Not too fond of what comes after it either," said Naruto in admittance, knowing that usually was a sign of his grandfather's displeasure. He pursed his lips as he thought that line sounded familiar, but shook it off, his ADHD kicking back into gear as Sasuke pointed the sword at him. "Dai, Chidori Isu, 1000 bird sharp spear." The lightning on Sasuke's Chikudo came together and shot forward in a single stream, making Naruto's eyes widen. He brought his shield up to protect him only for the attack to pierce through and get Naruto through the chest. The blonde's eyes were wide and he looked at the shield where it was pierced, a single thought coming to mind. "Pan, are you dead?" Chapter 17. Naruto's eyes were wide as he fell to his back, going into shock from the impalement of Sasuke's attack. His mind was reeling in confusion, fear and slow acceptance of the truth. Pan was either dead or on the verge of it. Naruto knew this for a fact, because of Kyuubi's own deal with the near-fated god. The fox agreed to take the form of Pan's shield if it would conceal his power from the gods, not wanting to be used by someone he held no respect for, something only 2 people had obtained, the Sage of 6 Paths and Naruto Uzumaki, due to a battle shared in Hades. With the shield gone though, Sasuke had to raise his arm to shield himself as a wave of pure hatred and power coursed over him. His eyes wide in disbelief as the red energy bubbled from the shattered shield on the pierced wrist of his one-time friend. A humanoid wearing a fox-like Anbu mask formed in front of him, eyes very similar to his own save for the black sclera and the thin black slit that was the entity's pupil. It started to get larger and larger, the mask shattering and a fox-like form coming to it, tails at the end becoming longer and multiple in number. "Kyuubi no Kitsune," thought Sasuke in realization as he watched the bane of his former village reform, the forced servant of Madara roaring as it became large enough to rival mountains in size. He knew the beast was large from his last encounter with it, but this was very unexpected. No wonder Madara had said to keep the blonde idiot alive. Naruto had known all along where the Biju hid. Once again, he was surprised by the actions of his rival. "Foolish Ningen!" Kyuubi shouted at him with a hint of excitement in his voice. "You do not realize what you have done. With your power, I will right the wrongs done to my clan," said Sasuke, his eyes morphing into what was known as the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, kaleidoscope copy will eye, black returning to his eye until a unique atom shape remained. The fusion of his elder brother's eye with his own had staved off the curse of blindness with prolonged use. It had also given him many abilities. "You nor any other shall ever use my power without my permission," said Kyuubi. A dark fox-like grin spread across his muzzle as the black portions of its face turned a deep blue, runes of a foreign language appearing across its body in the same color while the symbol of Omega appeared on its forehead. I would kill you, but that honor belongs to the kit. I have my own duty to attend to. This will be the last that we meet, Uchiha. Farewell, Tsukuyomi. Sasuke cried out in a last-ditch attempt to capture the fox in his gaze. The eyes of the fox met his, but as he expected, nothing came of it. In the last Uchiha's opinion, it was worth a shot. Have fun, said Kyuubi. The giant fox slowly dissolved into a large red mist before Sasuke's eyes, making the Uchiha look around for any sort of re-emergence, missing the small sliver of chakra that went into Naruto's ear before dispersing with the rest of the mist. With a disappointed snort, Sasuke deactivated his eyes and looked at his former ally's body with a scowl. Some fight, said Sasuke. He scoffed and turned around, sheathing his sword and walking away. I guess once a loser always a loser. The words hit Naruto's ears and his hand twitched. He made a struggling grunt, reaching up with his injured arm's hand to press it against the hole in his chest. That's the second time that's happened, thought Naruto in annoyance. So am I right to assume you're going to kick his ass? Helios asked. Damn straight, said Naruto softly. His words had Sasuke stopping in his tracks and turning to face the blonde. Naruto lowered his hand as he pushed himself to sit up a bit, looking at the hole going through his wrist and gritting his teeth. The sun seemed to shine brighter as it, and the hole in his chest, slowly seared itself shut as it regenerated. Now once again whole, Naruto got back to his feet, his eyes locking on Sasuke. Let's try this again, said Naruto with a scowl on his face, his left hand's fingers igniting with golden flames. Sasuke watched as Naruto slowly combusted, going from his left hand to his arm, spreading across his chest and down his body to his legs. The strange dojutsu changed from blue eyes with golden pupils into solid golden orbs with blue sun-shaped pupils glaring at the Uchiha. Runes similar to the ones that spread across the Kyuubi's body spread from Naruto's chest to his arms and down his legs. Naruto looked down at the sword on the ground. The cracked and shattered ruby on the pommel once housed his former tenant's soul resembled how he felt, broken. For a long time the Kyuubi was a part of Naruto and he felt wrong walking around without the giant fuzzball in his gut. That had resulted in him seeking out the titanic chakra beast in the underworld before he returned to the realm of the living. He desired that forced companionship, the urgency to feel whole once more led to the fight between him and the fox, which he barely won. And he had to go and take that from me, Naruto thought as his gaze went back to his friend. He crouched down and took the sword into his hand, causing it to change into a blade similar to that of what was called a kopis, a Greek sword that curved forward and was about 36 inches in length from the tip of the blade to the pommel. Naruto smirked, thinking of the origin of the sword, the Kyuubi's fawn. This change called for a name. You will be blinded by my blade's brilliance, said Naruto, his voice echoed by Helios. He lifted the blade by its handle, which changed slightly to move the guard from the back to go over his fingers. Sasuke of the clan Uchiha, beware of the eclipse. TCH, if you want to make an impression dope just do something and don't talk about it, said Sasuke, his hand pulling his own sword out once again. Gladly, said Naruto. He vanished in another flash of yellow and reappeared a foot away. Eclipse was reared back and prepared to slash, making Sasuke bring his own sword up. Naruto's blade dug into Sasuke's, the Stygian iron of the underworld mixed with the chakra channeling properties of the Biju's contributing base easily began cutting through the false grass cutter. The Uchiha, when he saw this, felt his eyes widen. What is dash? Nothing can withstand the power of an eclipse, said Naruto informatively. Not even your false Kusanagi. Sasuke's eyes narrowed before flickering back into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan again. He closed his left eye and widened the right, making Naruto pause in confusion. Amaterasu. A torrent of pitch-black flames shot out from Sasuke's eye into Naruto's face at point blank, making Naruto stumble back and away while trying to clear his vision from the darkness that had encased him. Sasuke jumped on this, infusing his sword with lightning chakra once again and aiming for Naruto's heart with a stab, this time to be sure of the infuriating ex-Jinchuriki's death. He underestimated Naruto's uncanny sixth sense for danger and grunted in annoyance as the emblazed teen wrapped his hand around the Chikuto, stopping it in its place. What really irked the Uchiha was Naruto brushing off the lightning and blindingly bringing his sword down in an effort to slash Sasuke's arm. Naruto missed the arm, but managed to cut off the top half of Sasuke's Chikuto, making the Uchiha stare in disbelief at the portion of his sword that fell to the ground. Solar flare, said Naruto in a muffled exclamation, his body becoming blindingly bright and forcing Sasuke to look away. The glowing demigod successfully extinguished the dark flames, miffed that he couldn't simply absorb them due to the attribute to shadows they had. The only way to extinguish a shadow was to introduce some light, and so he did. This is insane, Sasuke thought as he lowered his arm and glared at his one-time friend. Naruto returned the glare tenfold, clenching his fist around the handle of his sword. Sasuke looked at his half-sword and closed his left eye once again. Amaterasu, he said, molding the flames with chakra into the shape of his sword. Naruto scowled in annoyance, rushing forward and slashing his sword against Sasuke's, meeting resistance with each blow because of the equality of the light and dark ratio. Looks like the old dog got some new tricks, said Naruto with a hint of annoyance. I thought we were fighting, said Sasuke with a scowl as his arms trembled under Naruto's superior physical strength. At this rate, he may have to use his Susanoo just to put the dumbass down. Point to you, said Naruto. He pressed against his former ally's blade as a grin spread across his face at the shaking of Sasuke's arms. Seems like someone's forgotten to do their daily push-ups. Fuck you, dope. Thanks for the offer, but I've already got a girlfriend. Sasuke released a cry of rage as he began losing his ground against Naruto's strength. His eyes snapped open and glared, red and black eyes of loathing looking at the blue and gold that seemed to gleam mockingly at him. Frustrated and irritated at his losing ground, the massacre survivor bared his teeth, trying to stave off his opponent's blade. Naruto scowled in annoyance and brought his sword back suddenly, making Sasuke stumble forward. The glowing demigod brought his sword up and swung it down, slashing at Sasuke's unprotected back. Susanoo. A purple glow sprouted from Sasuke's back, a small cage made of blue flames formed around him, stopping Naruto's blade with ease. The glowing demigod let a brow arch in confusion as he pulled away from the new defense. While not as annoying as say intangibility, Naruto was still a little miffed at being unable to land a solid blow. Especially after Sasuke caused Kyuubi to go into hiding by fucking with his shield. Speaking of which, Naruto's eyes narrowed at Sasuke's blade, trying to figure out how that happened. Like it, dope? Sasuke's voice made Naruto snap his attention to the smug-looking traitor's face. Susanoo, the ultimate technique of the Sharingan. Oh dear gods, you've got an ultimate technique, too? Naruto bemoaned, putting his left hand on his face. Sighing, he dropped the hand to his hip and the dull edge of his blade rested on his shoulder. We're just never going to be done here. Alright, I'll bite. What is this ultimate technique of yours, Sasuke? Susanoo is my guardian deity, said Sasuke, turning fully to look at the bored-looking and annoyed face of Naruto. It cannot be destroyed by any external means. The game is over, Naruto. Your little light show won't win this fight. Challenge accepted, said Naruto with a smirk. He dropped his sword-bearing arm down to his side in anticipation. I should warn you though, said Sasuke, this is only the initial beginning of my Susanoo. This is all extremely fascinating, Sasuke, but I've sort of got this thing to do, so can we hurry it up a bit? Sasuke's smirk fell back into a scowl. Fine then. The two stood still, the blonde's eyes narrowing, ignoring the direct gaze of the Sharingan, before he moved. In a blur he rushed forward, swinging his blade at the cage and scowling when he met resistance. A bone-like arm burst from the left and a large manifested blade swung down at the glowing teen. Naruto's eyes flickered up and his free hand caught the giant sword descending on him. The ground beneath his feet cracked from the pressure and Naruto grunted. Holy hell! Helios exclaimed. What is this thing? A pain in the ass, said Naruto. Sasuke flickered a narrowed gaze at the blonde while pulling his right hand, still wielding the Amaterasu-formed blade, back and taking a swing. Naruto spun out of the way, withdrawing his sword to stave off the giant blade of Susanoo and catching Sasuke's overextended wrist. Twisting it, Naruto forced the blade out of Sasuke's hand. He released the Uchiha's arm and caught the blade before it touched the ground. He used Hiration to get some space from his opponent, making the giant blade finish its descent into the ground and giving him a cover of dirt. Sasuke snarled, holding his wrist before swiping his good hand out in front of him, making the bony arm of Susanoo to clear the air. You know, I wondered how you could break through my shield, said Naruto's voice, making Sasuke spin around to glare at the top of the Hashirama statue where the glowing teen stood, his sword eclipse stabbed into the statue's head while he held the black flame-covered sword in his hand. He swung it a few times before sighing. The grip on this is atrocious. It feels off. Too light for a Chikuto, like there's more space between the metal and the grip. Sasuke said nothing, making Naruto tilt his head. No comment. Then you wouldn't mind if I took a peek, would you? Again, Sasuke said nothing. Naruto hummed before shrugging. Taking the handle in both hands, Naruto twisted, breaking apart the wood and leather to reveal the gleaming metal core. Blue sun-like pupils narrowed at the Japanese characters engraved at the core. Uzumaki Kushina. The pinwheel's spiral blade, said Naruto with his nostrils flared. He raised the black emblazed blade up before shattering it over his knee, breaking the original metal away from what he saw as a tainted blade. He kicked the blade over the edge, looking down at the engraved metal as he did. He spun it onto the other side, finding nothing, before looking back at the characters. The blade that took his closest ally from him was originally his mother's. The irony did not elude him. Naruto gripped Eclipse's handle and stored the engraved metal in his back pouch, a scowl on his face as he did. His mother still had her sword, the one she used in life before her death. This came from her ceremonial short sword, a blade she was buried with. That meant that Orochimaru, or one of his cronies, had defaced his mother's grave. The Greeks found the act of grave robbing unforgivable, and his homeland found the act punishable by death. Orochimaru was lucky to be dead already, because Naruto was very eager to skin the snake-like bastard alive. I thought we were fighting, said Sasuke, snapping the irate blonde's attention on him once again. Naruto's hand tightened around Eclipse's handle, his eyes blazing in fury. His sword seemed to reflect his anger, as Eclipse's Stygian iron blade shone a brilliant gold before bursting into white flames. Naruto vanished and reappeared in front of Sasuke, Eclipse brought back over his shoulder and cutting through the incomplete cage of Susanoo, making the Uchiha's eyes widen as his defense was broken. Naruto followed through with the opening and punched Sasuke squarely in the face, feeling and hearing the satisfying crunch of his one-time friend's nose break against his knuckles. With a furious cry, Naruto put enough strength that had Atlas stumbling into the follow-through of the punch, sending Sasuke flying back into the rocky wall of the Valley of the End. Naruto breathed heavily through his nose, trying to calm down from his burst of anger. The blonde clenched his jaw and lowered his arm, relaxing his stance. Chidori Iso. Naruto sidestepped out of the way of the beam of electricity, his eyes narrowing at the hole that Sasuke pulled himself out of with his hand extended. The last Uchiha had blood pouring down his face from his broken nose and his eyes were set into a glare. The glowing teen narrowed his gaze, vanishing from sight and reappearing right in front of Sasuke with his sword above his head. Sasuke's eyes widened a margin and he moved out of the descending sword's way, making Naruto slice through the rocky earth like it was butter. Sasuke panted before clenching his fists and gritting his teeth. Susanoo. Naruto pulled his sword out of the rock wall and watched as a purple form built itself up around the Uchiha. It started off human-like, but then the head started to form. Horns like a bull sprouted from the skull-like head and then the muscles formed. In front of the reincarnated demigod, a demonic samurai rose above the raging Uchiha, two right arms sprouting from the elbow while a single left arm grew. A purple manifested blade appeared in the upper right arm, while the lower arm held a ball of the energy. A bow, which in Naruto's opinion looked like it was more of a shield than a bow, sprouted over the left arm and the glowing yellow eyes of the defense locked on Naruto's golden form. And here I thought there was no such thing as a bigger douche, said Naruto. Playtime is over, Naruto. Sasuke announced as he jumped up and allowed legs to form. Naruto groaned as he looked up at the 30-foot-tall manifestation. Another giant, just what he wanted. The blonde gripped his sword tightly. Ready, Helios? Just say the magic words, kid. Naruto let a small smirk spread across his face before both of their voices spoke. Then let's light it up. The glowing demigod shot off the ground, making a crater as he jumped at the tall purple energy warrior. The left arm shot out to smack him down, only for Naruto to teleport just right of the hand, reappearing atop of the arm and running up to the head. He jumped again as the right arm wielding the blade took a swing and the other right arm shot a beam of what Naruto assumed to be chakra at him. The glowing teen maneuvered himself midair to avoid other beams of chakra, bringing the still burning blade of Eclipse down onto the left side of Susanoo's neck. The manifestation let out a strangled, and demented, cry at the strike, one that sounded like the mix of a roar and of Sasuke's own voice. Naruto pulled Eclipse back and swung again, cutting into the supposedly impenetrable armor and getting another loud cry for his action. Naruto growled at the thickness of the armor in frustration before he pulled Eclipse back. With a shout, Naruto drove the burning tip of Eclipse into the neck, piercing through the small part of the chakra-manifested armor with ease, getting an earth-shakingly loud scream that made Naruto's eyes widen. Sasuke felt Susanu's injuries. Naruto steeled his resolve and tore his blade through the side, cutting open Susanu's neck. He forced the hole open, ignoring the scream Sasuke was letting out. This was a fight that Sasuke, and a part of himself, wanted, and he was going to finish it. Naruto forced his way into the manifestation, dropping down behind the screaming Uchiha. Sasuke felt Naruto's presence, turning around just in time for Naruto's sword to cut into the joint of his left shoulder, making Sasuke's eyes widen. Naruto yanked out the blade and raised his other hand right into Sasuke's eyes, the golden palm gleaming slightly. "I won't kill you, Sasuke. I'll do worse." "No!" Solar flare. Sasuke's Sharingan took the full brunt of the light, his scream deafening and his Susanoo collapsing from the strain the castor was taking. Sasuke dropped to the ground on his back, his good hand reaching up for his eyes as he screamed while Naruto landed on his feet, panting. He coughed again, golden-laced blood being spat to the side as his left hand stung upon contact with the air, the flesh literally burnt away from his heated attack. He stared down at the writhing form of his former friend, but did nothing else. This would be the punishment, Naruto's revenge on the friend that tried to kill him. Like with his encounter with Luke, it was a bittersweet victory. Vengeance is the path one takes when they have nothing to lose. Helios said in a rare moment of guidance. "I think you knew that all along." Naruto said nothing as he tried to regain his breath. He just watched as Sasuke screamed and writhed around on the ground. The Uchiha brought his hand down, his blank and dull eyes searching around fruitlessly. Sasuke rolled onto his hands and knees, struggling to get to his feet. He grit his teeth and his head swiveled around. "Naruto! Naruto! What did you do to my eyes, Naruto?" "This is just sad," said Naruto softly, closing his eyes. They snapped back open as he jumped back, narrowly avoiding being hit by Jugo's giant gray fist. He ducked under a following swing, but it was a feint and a damn left strike caught him off guard again, getting Naruto right in the gut. Gasping, Naruto stumbled back, only to be cracked across the face and sent tumbling. His body was slowly recovering from the strain on his body from taking too much power, faster than the average child of Apollo with vitakinesis, but still slower than normal. His still burnt hand pressed down on the dirt and he cried out at the pain. "Keep him busy, Jugo," said Suigetsu, grabbing Sasuke under his arm. "Shut it, Sasuke. I'm trying to help you, asshole." My eyes. My eyes. Yeah. Jugo, go." Jugo called, his face partially normal as he kicked the downed Naruto. Suigetsu nodded and jumped away. Jugo turned to the one that attacked his leader, the one Kimimaro was loyal to, and delivered a powerful kick directly to the ribs of the blonde. "Come on. Get up. Fight. Die like a warrior. You sound like my uncle." "Act a bit like him, too," said Naruto with another cough of golden speckled blood. He caught the next kick aimed at his side and tugged, dropping the violent mutated man to his back. "You're even as predictable as he is, dumbass." Jugo responded with a snarl and a kick to the whiskered teen's face. Naruto's head snapped back and the blonde was pretty sure he chipped a tooth. That'll be a bitch to fix for the next few days. The mutated warrior got to his feet quickly. Jugo's axe-like protrusion returned and he dropped it in the direction of Naruto's head. The blonde rolled out of the way, and rolled again when a frustrated Jugo tried to once more split the head of the blonde, this time with a sword-like growth out of his forearm. Naruto used Hiration to get some distance from Jugo. Unfortunately, he underestimated the effects of teleporting on an open burn. "Ow" was an understatement to what Naruto felt when he reappeared on the opposite side of the Valley of the End, biting his lip in order not to cry out. Naruto scooted up to the rock wall, grasping his wrist and glaring at the slowly healing palm. "Heal, damn it." His head smacked against the wall behind him. It did nothing to dull the pain. "Ow." It also hurt a bit. "Found you." Naruto shifted to his right to avoid the sword-like hand that was stabbed in his direction. Wow, he must be seriously out of it if the bloodlust-driven mutant could get the drop on him, or Jugo is better than Naruto originally thought. Jugo's axe-like arm was raised and he grinned maniacally. "Die!" Two streams of lightning shot out from the forest and sent Jugo rolling to the side. Naruto looked over, sighing in relief as Talia and Jason rushed at the rising madman with their sparking spears at the ready. Naruto hissed as dust shot up in their collision. His instinctual protection of his face caused the debris-filled air to brush against his still healing palm. Damn, he needed some bandages or something. Naruto! The monotonous voice of Gaara made Naruto look up, seeing the grainy form of the destabilizing clone and the concerned face of Piper looking down at him. Are you alright? Could be worse. Could still be dead, said Naruto, using his good hand to press against the rock wall and get back to his feet. He looked the Kazekage over before a golden brow arched. Clones, the other Kage have been notified and are on their way with aid for Konoha, said Gaara. The meeting should finish in person. If we continued to use clones, we'd never get anything done. I beg to differ, said Naruto with a smirk. Not all of us can make an army. You're still mad about the 1000 barrage thing, aren't you? I never said that. You're not denying it either. Naruto shook his head as the sand clone dissolved and blew away in the wind, not giving a response. Gaara was definitely still mad, but in his defense, Naruto used an explosive kunai to his ass. Not the best way for the untouchable monster of Suna to be attacked, or the most dignified for that matter. The blonde hissed as a gust of wind hit his hand, pulling it to his chest and looking at Piper. Not going to go jump into the fray? Naruto asked the young demigoddess. Piper shook her head, watching as Jason and Talia stabbed, deflected and smacked Jugo with their electrified spears that could do little good against mortals, but did a good job at keeping Jugo on his toes. Naruto nodded and looked down at his hand. Makes sense. You're too new to this, I should say. Don't worry, we'll fix that once we get back to camp. Still got Zephyr's dagger? Yes, said Piper, looking at the dagger in her hand. She looked back up and watched as Talia blocked Jugo's axe with her shield and jabbed her spear into his side. Will I learn to fight like that? Hopefully, said Naruto. He gave her a small smirk. Unless you act like your cabin and get all gossipy during training. I'd rather learn how to fight, said Piper. By the gods, I didn't think it was possible. Another Silena Beauregard. Damn, there goes that 5 drachma bet I made against Castor. Who? Son of the head counselor. Duck. Naruto dropped down and Piper quickly followed suit as Talia's shield was sent flying over their heads. Well, this is going well. Stay here a second, Pipes. He ran forward, ignoring the angry glare the younger girl gave him for using her dad's nickname for her. In his right hand, the good one, he began building up heat and chakra, creating the small yet destructive Teoten, Rasengan. As the miniature ball of light built up in his hand, Naruto got closer to the fight, sliding under a swing made by Jugo that was aimed at Jason. He spun on the ball of his foot as Talia thrust her spear forward, the head sparking much like her eyes as it impaled Jugo's side and making the maniac cry out at the electrocuting pain. Jason twirled Julius in his hand before he also stabbed forward, though his spear went in through Jugo's back and out his stomach. Jugo fell to his knees, roaring as the burning power of lightning coursed through his body. Naruto juggled a ball of light to his burnt left hand, the skin healing over much faster at the exposure to the flames of the attack, though Naruto failed to take notice, and pulled Eclipse out. With burning determination, Naruto spun Eclipse around in his hand and stabbed it through Jugo's left shoulder blade, the sword shooting out through his pectoral and making Jugo's head snap up. Jugo's crazed eyes met Naruto glowing ones. Teoten, Rasengan. Naruto announced as he brought the attack down towards Jugo's awaiting face. The attack exploded outwards centimeters away from contact, unstable due to Naruto juggling it when it wasn't designed to be. It was a premature explosion. The concussive force of Naruto's attack made the 3 demigods fly backwards away from their respective weapons, still impaled into Jugo's corpse. Jason hit the rock wall of the valley's signature cliff with enough force to make a small crater, while Talia ended up skidding through the dirt to a stop next to Piper, and Naruto went soaring through the woods, plowing down the giant trees No Kuni was famous for until he came to a stop a good mile away from the valley. His eyes fell shut and he faintly heard Helios calling out his name, as well as his arm throbbing in pain. Piper went to Talia since she was the closest, crouching next to the older girl and helping her out of the trench she made. The daughter of Zeus groaned, getting to her feet and looking at the mutated warrior getting to his own. "You have got to be kidding me," said Talia. She was used to kindly ones not staying down, but this guy just didn't know the meaning of the word retreat. Naruto wasn't kidding when he said most wouldn't accept surrender as an option. "I'll kill you first," said Jugo, pulling the weapons out of his body and dropping them to the ground. Eclipse was the hardest to remove, but Jugo got it out after a moment of struggling, along with a good chunk of his body. The mutated madman dropped the sword to the ground atop Jason's Julius and Talia's spear before storming at the two girls. Talia stepped in front of Piper with the faintest hints of sparks around her fists and charged at the older man, but Jugo knocked her away with the blunt side of his sword arm. He focused on the backpedaling daughter of Aphrodite, who stared wide-eyed at the abomination before her, causing her to trip and fall to the ground before she resumed her tactical retreat. Jugo lifted his axe-bearing arm up. "Die! Piper, look away!" Talia called out, but Piper didn't do that. Her adrenaline had her battle senses going wild and she kept her eyes on the closest threat. This meant that she watched as Talia impaled Jugo through his back, the lightning-encased bronzed spear coming out through his chest, a bit of blood spraying across Piper's face. Jugo looked down at the gleaming spearhead coming out of his chest, where a portion of his heart was, and slowly the gray part of his face faded away, the weapon-like protrusions vanishing as his body shut down. His body twitched from the lightning coursing through his veins. Talia pulled her spear out, allowing Jugo to fall to the side. He landed on his back, coughing up blood before his eyes landed on Talia. "I die." His head fell to the other side and his breathing stopped. It was then that Talia realized she had just killed someone, not a monster, not something from Greek history, but a living breathing human, at least he looked it now. She didn't know how to react to that, and looking at the wide-eyed, blood-covered Piper, Talia knew that this wouldn't be as easy to shake off as she thought it would be when Naruto warned her and her cousins that it most likely would happen. Everything had changed. Sasuke screamed, thrashing in his bed in the hidden lair of Madara within the Land of Rain. All he could see was white and his head felt like it was on fire. He wasn't sure how that damn idiot blinded him, but once he got his eyesight back, "I am going to kill him." "Stop struggling, Sasuke-kun," hissed out his very pale and very snake-like doctor. He had pale white hair and yellow serpent-like eyes, a purple marking around his left eye and what appeared to be scales going down the left side of his body. The man once known as Kabuto Yakushi, now dubbed Kabutomaru by Suigetsu for his experiment to fuse himself with the remains of his old employer Orochimaru. The snake-like monstrosity of a surgeon sighed and dropped the head of his deceased master's favorite pet project. "There's absolutely nothing I can do. You may release him, Suigetsu." "Oh, gee, thanks," said Suigetsu sarcastically as he released Sasuke's body from the water entrapment he had created. He walked over to the side of the room and grabbed his giant butcher's blade, carrying it out with him as he grumbled about abusing power and lazy crazy assholes. Kabuto rolled his eyes before returning his attention to his patient, who continued to writhe and loudly curse the blonde ex-Jinchuriki. Humming to himself, Kabuto wondered what exactly Naruto did to permanently blind the eyes of an Uchiha. Sure, the Sharingan could make out shapes, but that wasn't good for someone who needed to be on the front lines of a war. Or for Sasuke's own mental health, but in Kabuto's opinion that was unsalvageable, and anyone to try to help Sasuke's mentality would only lose themselves to madness as well. Sighing, Kabuto turned and walked away, planning on going over his and Orochimaru's old notes to see if he could find any sort of cure for Sasuke's new problem. "I'll kill him," Sasuke vowed. "I'll rip off his head." No, too simple, too easy. "First, I'll destroy the village. Then I'll kill him." "Naruto Uzumaki, you're dead, but would it do you any good?" The voice was deep, yet hissing like a snake. However, it was not that of any of Sasuke's summons or of Kabuto's. That Sasuke knew of anyway. "Who said that?" Sasuke demanded. "Kabuto? Suigetsu? Karen? Jugo? Would you like to see again?" "Of course. Do you want vengeance on the boy?" "More than anything. How far would you go to achieve both?" "I will do whatever it takes to get my revenge." "How about a deal, then?" "I'm listening. You make a blood pact with me as you have with the animals of these lands, and I will help you get back at that boy." "How do I know you won't betray me?" Sasuke heard the voice chuckle and he felt the room go dark as something moved serpent-like within it, fast enough to make a rush of wind. "Because I too want to kill the boy. Though, this is more out of my own vengeance against his father." "I will kill him," said Sasuke determinedly. This was the last straw. "Of course. Who are you?" "All will be clear after we make the deal." Sasuke scowled. He was being put into the dark on this deal and he didn't like it. However, he wouldn't be much good to redeeming his clan's name without his sight. Gritting his teeth, Sasuke lifted his hand and bit down on his thumb to draw blood. He offered his hand and something scaly wrapped around it, drawing on his blood and making Sasuke writhe in pain. As he screamed in agony, the voice chuckled darkly, "Vengeance will be mine, Soriktonos." That's it for part 12. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.